Hi, Robert. If you are seeing us, can you please give us a sign? Like, right? I think we're good. Thanks. Lovely. Perfect. Okay. Welcome to this experience. Okay, so let's keep going with this. I don't need this anymore. Okay, so first of all, welcome everyone to this experience, Barossa Wine and Cheese experience on AgriAdventures platform. Tonight we are with Daniel.
Hello, everyone. Hello, Robert.
Daniel is the owner partner of the Chaffey winery.
With my brother-in-law, Theo, who's not here tonight. Yeah, thanks for having us, Simone.
Thank you for having me, because I am in your place, actually. See,
that's right.
That's a big start over there. And okay, so for who's not familiar with the Barossa Valley is located in the northeast part of Adelaide. So South Australia, Adelaide, northeast. And it's mildly known, at least I came in Australia, actually in South Australia, because Barossa Valley.
Oh, good.
I did not know
it was the lure.
It was the wine.
Mm-hmm.
It was the wine.
I was
studying about.
It's a good reason.
Absolutely. I was studying about wine, and the only thing I knew about Australia was Penfolds.
Yes. Yeah.
So I thought, if I have to go somewhere, I'm going to go in Barossa, as actually was close by Adelaide. I figured it out after.
Yeah.
So that's pretty interesting. Anyway, so just to go in the details again, Barossa Valley, as you were saying before, it's kind of correlated with Eden Valley. There is the Flinders Range.
The Mount Lofty Range. It's the range, the fault line that is the defining thing about Adelaide, really, and all of most of our great wine regions, starting from McLaren Vale in the south, running through Adelaide Hills, Barossa, and then it peters out towards Clare. So that's an amazing piece of geography that shaped those wine regions and gives us the hills and valleys that we enjoy growing these grapes in.
We really need. So I'm just going to move a second the microphone over here, because when you look at me, so unless they can hear on the other side. Okay. So, and tonight we have, wait a second. I was saying before, historically speaking, Barossa Valley was settled from German settlers and from English settlers. And the three historic towns. One is Tanunda.
Yes.
Please correct me if I don't pronounce the
name properly.
Tanunda, perfect.
We're probably all saying it wrong. It's an Aboriginal word, so we probably need to go to another reference to get the correct pronunciation.
And that was settled by German people.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
And then we have Angaston. That was English, so more English and Cornish and Irish, I think too.
Yeah, George Fife English. George Fife Angus was an Englishman, but it was an English settlement. You can see that in the houses in Angaston. The hills have these beautiful English homesteads, and Tanunda is very different. There's the town of Bethany was where the Prussian migrants first moved to. Lots of little, more Prussian-styled dwellings, and that's spilled out into what is now known as Tanunda. So quite different towns. Each of those three villages, and they're the large villages of the Barossa, are unique.
Oh, sorry, the third one is Noriutpa.
Yes.
Okay, which is a mix of both.
Yeah, and geographically, that's what we call the flatland. You know, I grew up around Noriutpa, not far from the pheasant farm, Maggie Beer's pheasant farm, but you know, the fancy folk live in Tanunda, but I was actually born just outside of Angaston, and for me that's a beautiful village and quite different. So the Barossa is a big region, and Angaston really, this map shows it in the Barossa Valley side, but Angaston really is on the edge of the Eden Valley, and you do notice a difference. As you drive into Angaston, you're going somewhere slightly different to those other two towns, and then you've got the different climate and geography of Eden Valley, which is much more suited to these Rieslings and aromatic white wines that we're going to explore.
Exactly. And we're going to see, obviously, the producers for tonight. So the Barossa Valley cheese in Angaston, and you guys, which are a little bit, disappeared. And you guys, you're located in the German side.
Yeah, so that's where our cellar door is, but our home is the Barossa Valley in general, and a lot of our vineyards are on the Eden Valley side. So we know Victoria at Barossa Cheese really well, and Anguston is a big part of our home base as well. But the Artisans of Barossa cellar door is where we're based in Tanunda, and that's pretty much the current cellar door is where the map shows it, but our new cellar door is going to be almost between the two brands there, and we feel like that's almost the geographical epicenter of the Barossa, and it's going to be a great place to land in when the new Artisans of Barossa cellar door opens in October. So fancy and exciting, and a lot of work to be done.
Perfect. Okay, yeah, exactly. So now I would like that you tell us a little bit about you guys. So that's the interview that we have done together, and now we can move over here. Hello. Oops, I'm gonna change view. Perfect. Sorry about that. Perfect. Okay. So tell something about the business.
I grew up in the Barossa, born in Anguston, as I said. So my parents. So I'm a fifth generation winemaker in the Chaffey family, but we almost lost touch with the wine business. My great grandfather started it, and each generation was heavily involved. But my parents worked at my dad worked at Seaview Wines with his great uncle, and then he moved to the Barossa, obviously with my mum, and started working for Penfolds, but more in a maintenance engineering kind of way, helping set up the bottling line. So I grew up with vineyards all around my house, and wondered for years what I was going to do with my life, and started had a job at Penfolds in the cellar door, worked doing a number of things, restaurant, washing dishes, fruit picking. Mum worked at the pheasant farm with Maggie Beer. So food changed for us growing up. All of a sudden, when Mum worked there, we went from a household that had the traditional Aussie meat and 3 veg, very boring food with a bit of the Polish influence from my mum's side of the family, and then pate, kangaroo, all these things that we didn't eat. In fact, kangaroo was marked not for human consumption when we started eating it. It was meant to be pet food back then, and it wasn't illegal to sell kangaroo meat in the mid-80s.
Didn't know that. Absolutely, very interesting.
Yeah, so all of a sudden, with Maggie's influence and others, the Barossa Valley changed. It was very much a wine-growing region, but it became suddenly a bit more sophisticated. We started to understand our place in the world in a food and wine sense, rather than just being a place that made port and other things. We're a bit more sophisticated, and the Shiraz Revolution, Rockford, all those things happened. So growing up, it became suddenly more attractive to get into the wine business, but it was probably the last thing I thought of. And having circled around other things, and I want to be an electronics engineer. I'm really thankful I didn't end up doing that. But now, in the end, I got to apply all the things that I did. I even became a bulk wine broker for many years before I started making my own wine. So seeing that side of things, for working for printing labels for other people, people like Grant Burge or the Henschkes and so on, I got to see what these people did in the early days in the 80s and 90s, and really learned a lot from all those experiences. And eventually, because everyone else shared this passion, like my mum loved Riesling, she worked at Leo Buring, it just got into my head and into my blood that I wanted to work with Riesling, wanted to work with Shiraz. So eventually decided to make our own, and not being trained, had to become a Google winemaker and self-taught, phone a friend, all the mates that you've met over the years. What do I do now? How do we do this? So quite an exciting way to learn, but you don't have the preconceptions that if you've studied it. So you get, we probably tried a few more things that if we went to university, they would have said, don't do that.
Yes,
so
exactly.
Yeah,
I know what you mean.
And we question everything. Why do we want to use fining agents? And it's interesting now. We actually, some of the things we did instinctively or intuitively, people are starting to do, and they're teaching it more at university now. Maybe you don't need to use fining agents or as sulfur in the process and things like that. So it's been a fun way to learn.
Perfect. Wow, and did the journey in wine started when?
Making our own wine in
Yep.
2010 was the first Riesling we made. We released that in 2011. So we're coming up to 10 years, and hence we've got the celebration of a few Rieslings in the background there. We launched the Not Your Grandma's Riesling 10 years ago. And we had our distributor here just before, and we started to look back through a bit of history, bit of bottled history there. And that's the beauty of Riesling, is it ages so well. It's an exciting varietal. People think of red wines when they think of ageability, but Riesling is, I think, the ultimate ageable table wine. It can be bottled history when we get it right. Okay, and so now let's go back a little bit on the presentation. And I was wondering, who's this guy? That's my brother-in-law. That's Theo. Hi, Theo. Hopefully, if Theo's watching it at home. Theo there, he looks a bit different now. He's got a giant woolly beard now. So okay. I met the picture when he was young. Well, that was how long ago was it? Probably 1 year and a half. 1 year, yeah. It looks like he's taken 10 years off when he shaved his beard there. He's originally from South Africa. Okay. I met my wife in 2006, and I inherited in the dowry. I got a business partner, and it's been a fantastic thing to have Theo join the business. And he studied business in Melbourne, and he brings a different. Well, he was supposed to be the guy that was sensible and said no to all the silly ideas, but in fact, he's just added to the silly ideas that we say yes to. So we've got too many yes men. That's why we've got 16 or 17 wines now. 17 wines. Wow. Amazing. Not quite as bad as Darren Bird, but we're on our way. Yeah. Okay. Oh, by the way, we have the other part of the experience, which I'm going to show you on the small camera now. You can see, these are our cheeses for today. We're going to speak about them in a second. I think the best thing to do is to start with a little bit of wine. That's a good idea. Hi, Tasman. So. Wait, sorry, wait a second. Well, unless I'm going to be behind the schedule. Okay, so. I haven't finished because something that was looking to say, and it was speaking why you express Barossa, not just one specific area, is because, as you explained me last time, you work with different growers. Yes. And then you have this strong relationship with them, almost family. Absolutely. Yeah. And you work together with their products, and then those products, those grapes are coming from different vineyards. Yeah, very much in the original Barossa tradition, and we'll touch on the history of the Barossa, I think, in your presentation. But the way the Barossa was settled with these Prussian migrants coming in, and a lot of the winemakers were of the English descent originally, and the new migrants were encouraged to plant grapes. And they did, and many of them had no winemaking experience. Some did, but the arrangement of selling to the established wineries was initiated, and people like Peter Lehman and others have carried on that tradition over the years. We've got 2,000 plus small growers in the Barossa, and we've got 200 or 300 wineries. So each winery tends to source from multiple. It's not like in France or many places in Italy where the estate winery model is the norm. Even in Margaret River is much like the old world estates, where there's just the winery owner tends to own a patch of vineyard, usually around a winery or close to it. Whereas here Henschke is an estate. That's probably one of the true estates in the Barossa, but even Henschke source fruit from other vineyards as well. So we share some vineyards with the likes of them. And sometimes, in the case of the Henschke family, they're related to the Fechners, who we work with. So in good Barossa tradition, everyone's related in the Barossa. So they're our friends, and in the first instance with the Duft Punkt wine we're about to taste, it's the Fechner brothers, but there's probably 5 or 6 key vineyards that we work with for a lot of our wines, and then there's another 10 that we source a small amount for. And we love blending in some of our wines, but we also love the really drilling down to that site that you get with a single vineyard wine. So many of more than half of our wines are single vineyard wines now as well. Okay. And that's both good expressions, the
Yep.
blend,
Yep.
the Shiraz from multiple vineyards.
Yep.
You know, you're painting with all the colors on your artist's palette
Well,
to make
yeah.
to make a wine, or you take it from a very special vineyard and you say this is really worth highlighting, and just painting with that shade, that color, and then comparing it to another part of the Barossa, because we've got so many different soil types, and they work together harmoniously in a blend. But sometimes it's so fascinating to look at them in isolation. So that's what excites us, and if it excites us, we think it's worth sharing. And
Absolutely.
Here we are.
Agree. Lovely. So what we have over here. So if you haven't started yet, you can start it. I believe that you already started. Probably it's a second glass ready. No, I'm just joking. And so what
Friday
we have,
night, it's dinner time.
Exactly. So what we have over here, we have the Duft Punkt.
Duft Punkt.
Duft Punkt.
So the umlaut, those two dots over the U, mean we go long on that vowel. I'm no linguist, and I don't speak I speak a little German. I'm bisschen, but which means a little bit, but not a lot. So I think I've just exhausted my German capabilities there. But we always joke that we love umlauts.
Do you want to show it at the camera over there? You can see that is like over.
Oh, this camera?
Yes.
The Duft Punkt. So we will zone in there. So yeah, that wine looks.
Can stay on this side. Yeah.
It looks. It's.
Let's have a look at the color, because it's an exciting color in my opinion. I'll see if you can see it. Probably the light at the moment is not giving the proper not respect, but value.
So sort of a straw to gold. There's some golden hints coming into it.
Yeah, probably this is a bit better.
It's 2 years old, this 2019 vintage. Now the name Duft Punkt, each of these Punkt wines is from a specific point, and we were good on you, Robert.
Good job.
Yeah,
we'll
catch up. We decided to celebrate the German language and the German points. So if you've been to the Barossa, especially 20 years ago, a lot of people still spoke Barossa Deutsch. So for me, we're talking about Germanic varietals here: Riesling, Gewürztraminer, and Kerner. And I thought, what better way to highlight what an interesting field blend from the Fechner family vineyard, a German Prussian family, than celebrating the name with a wacky German description, because it is. When we tasted the first one, we thought, wow, we've made something super aromatic here. And the words aromatic point don't sound very evocative in English, but that's what it translates to: the aromas point, or aromatic point, or literally perfumes point in German. Dufte is plural with the e on the end. If it was simply Duft, it would be perfume point, but this is perfumes point. So it's clumsy grammar, but it actually gets across what we're trying to say is 1 point, 3 aromatic varietals.
Okay, because exactly. And something they found really interesting when you described to me the winemaking process about this wine is that you had the co-fermented, is that right?
Correct. Yeah. So first,
which is not common, because not many producers, they generally, what they do, they ferment the single varieties and then they blend them together while you do the co-fermentation.
Yeah, I think we probably should mention this is what we would call a field blend, and I think the concept of a field blend is becoming better known now, and it's exactly what it sounds like. You take a field, in this case the Fechner family's surrounding hills. We look at, so we don't take the whole field because a lot of it's Shiraz. So the ultimate field blend would be pick everything on that vineyard and throw it in to the crusher and make whatever comes out. I think it dates back mainly to the old world, France, often, where even in one vineyard, in one patch, sometimes they didn't even know what they'd planted. You know, one vine might be Riesling, another one might be Gewürztraminer.
In Italy, the same.
Same, yeah. And
same in Italy. Like Chianti is a blend of different varieties. The people didn't know what was the variety. They simply said, oh, look, it's in Chianti region, so we're going to call it Chianti. There were wide varieties in the Chianti. They've been removed after.
And because the Barossa was planted some years later and probably more systematically and with the learnings of the old world, separated more rigidly, the varietals, that was a bit less common to have that mix of plants in the vineyard. But we've got usually a patch of Riesling. In this case, the western side has got some Gewürztraminer. The eastern slopes have got the Riesling. So lovely protected east-facing slopes.
Okay.
And that's what we look for with Riesling in the Eden Valley, because we're in a warmish region. We say the Eden Valley is cooler, but still warmer than the Moselle or the Rhine in Germany. It's actually the people in Germany think it's crazy that we grow Riesling in Australia, but the proof is in the bottle. We can make beautiful Rieslings here. The soil and the climate, it works incredibly well with Riesling. So it's a hugely expressive varietal that shows you where it's grown. And in this part of the Eden Valley, the Riesling is a bit more generous and a bit more, a little bit more tropical edge than the southern end.
Exactly. Hello. Okay, so if you want to say something, you can unmute and open the camera so we can have a chat about it. This part of the video won't be recorded, so don't worry. There is not an issue of privacy stuff.
Yeah.
And but I was just curious because I'm really interested about the nose of this wine, because distinctively you can find the varieties in it. Like I can find the kerosene. Hey,
hello. How are you?
Very well, thanks.
Oh, what is the audio?
Das ist
Can't hear you. Let's see where we're going. Oh,
the whole family there.
Yes, exactly. That is the fun part. Okay.
Yeah. So I guess with respect to the varietals, so this field blend is very much roughly in proportion to what's grown in the vineyard. And in this instance, there's a little bit more Riesling than there is Gewürztraminer. And then the third varietal, Kerner, is extremely rare. I think we've talked a little bit about it, but it's the only Kerner now grown in the southern hemisphere and in Australia.
Okay.
There used to be some in Swan Hill, but that vineyard that's definitely too warm, I think, to make reliable Kerner every year. But in the Eden Valley, it flourishes, and it's a really interesting story about how the Fechner brothers came to plant it. They actually won a trip to Germany when they were part of a prize that they were growing for St. Helens prior to growing for us. And they won a big Riesling prize. And the boys Graham went to Germany, and he went to several Riesling producers in the Moselle. And a few of them commented about, this is our Kerner. And he was like, hang on, whoa, what's Kerner?
Yeah.
Explained it's a crossbreed between Riesling and a red grape called Trollinger.
Yes,
and
or
then
Schiava, or there's another one.
Grenache, or
South Grenache.
So Riesling.
And we are confusing. Okay, let's have a sip of wine first. Okay.
Riesling crossed with a red grape. So basically, what you've got is a textural Riesling. It's a bit like Riesling that has a bit of that influence of, that it's crossed with that red grape, so you get that skinsy element there. It's a little bit got the acidity dialed down a little bit compared to straight Riesling.
Okay.
But you've got the lovely drive and the ageability of Riesling, but it is more textural, a little bit more savory, I would say.
Okay.
And works really well with salty flavors.
Well, I like it because it sounds like I feel the kernel is giving a sort of body, the roundness at the bottom.
Yeah.
While I can get the aromaticity from the Gewürztraminer, which is really recognizable, and the Riesling. So Gewürz generally goes into my nose is sort of lychee.
Really lifted, pretty. Gewürztraminer is translates to spicy Traminer, but it is heady and aromatic, and sometimes rosewater, Turkish delight, and so by itself, it's almost a bit like when someone wears too much perfume. It's like, whoa, it's
it can be
very heady. But aged Gewürztraminer, and when it's made really carefully, it can be delicious, and it's not over the top. It's a little bit more restrained, and when it's with the Riesling and the Kerner, it's a bit like it's the eau de toilette versus the eau de parfum, sort of, less intense version.
Okay, so probably better now turn off the cameras, otherwise all this part of the video is gonna be cut, all the lovely information. Thank you very much. But what I was looking for, wait a second.
It's
perfect. So what also was interesting to me to say is that Gewürztraminer from the Tramin town, which was in Stoop Tyrol, that's now is part of Italy.
Yeah.
And Schiava, which was Trollinger, Schiava, South Bernash, is also from South Tyrol.
Yeah.
So it is interesting because we are speaking about German varieties that originated, two of those originated from Italy.
Yes.
Now, but before it was the Austro-Hungaric Empire.
Yeah.
So it's so scrambling.
The towns that are in Italy that speak German and vice versa on the other side of the border.
Exactly.
This wine is definitely, it's a type of blend that you see in France, in Alsace as well. The Riesling and the Gewürztraminer, but there instead of the Kerner, they might use the Pinot Grigio for the body. We're using the Kerner, which makes it this is the only blend of its kind in the world, because
why?
There's not a lot of Kerner around. Well, this is I'm throwing that claim out there. Whoops. But maybe someone will dial in and tell us that there is another one. But I haven't found another Riesling Gewürztraminer Kerner. It's because Kerner is probably not as widely planted in France, where that blend is common. And as you said, started Gewürztraminer started in town of Tramin in northern Italy, and then as it went through Germany, a mutation was observed, that red mutation, and it became Gewürztraminer, and we have it here today. So I love that Italian connection, especially with the Kerner, because it is a German varietal, but it works so well with Italian food. And if you go to Chianti, or even
for people that's following, Chianti is a restaurant
Chianti Classico.
That is an Italian restaurant or Italian style restaurant.
One of the longest running Italian restaurants there, and you wouldn't expect to see a German varietal on the list. You wouldn't assume that would be commonplace, but they've always got a Kerner. In fact, they've had up to 4 Kerners on their list. Some from Italy, some from Germany, sometimes from Australia, and it just works so well with salty food. For me, every time I have something with anchovies, I think, Kerner.
Is the one.
Yeah,
exactly.
But this wine is like Kerner with its 2 party animal friends. The Gewürztraminer is the real party animal. Riesling's a bit more strict and keeps it sort of marching to a very strict beat. And the Kerner has just got that bassy body. They work so well together, and it's exciting for us to make it as a field blend too, because we pick it in the proportions that we think are going to work that year, and we combine it as juice. So we start with the Gewürztraminer, and then once we finish that, we move on to usually the Riesling, and then move on to the Kerner. So it happens over a course of 3 to 5 days. We work through the field. It gets combined as juice, co-fermented. So it's what we call a true field blend. Some people call it a field blend to make them separately and then blend them, with a bit of methodology later on, in a real fastidious way. They do their blending, and we like to go all in, do it theoretically, and then ride the gauntlet and see what pops out the other end. And that's the exciting way to make a field blend. And that's why you'll get a little bit of variation.
You said something interesting. You said that the varieties, they are ripening in different timing. Isn't that a challenge?
It's a great challenge. Yeah.
Because I think that, like, if you get the grapes and then you take the grapes in the cellar, and then they are generally starting to ferment in a short period of time.
That's right.
So one of the issues that I always say with winemakers they have is that shorter time to the delivery of the grapes in order to have the fresher. But you have different timing, and you do the fermenting. So what I understood, co-fermenting. So what I understood, you start to crush it, and then you let it sit down a little bit.
Correct. Yeah. So we, in some places, if the vineyard was smaller, you could just combine the grapes, and if they ripened all together at the same time. What we observed over time is that this vineyard, the Gewürztraminer, is usually about 2 or 3 days ahead of the others. And then we thought that everyone says, back then, don't do too much skin contact with Gewürz. So we did the opposite. We gave
I am pro skin contact.
Yeah, we did the opposite. We gave it extra skin contact because all that good spice is in the skins of the Gewürztraminer and all the texture. So you get so much more out of it. So we crush the Gewürztraminer, leave it sitting on the skins, and then meanwhile, we go back to the vineyard, pick the Riesling and so on. We just leave it sit there. as juice on the skins, getting lovely texture,
In flavor.
infused.
All the aromaticity is coming out. Yeah.
And then we add in the Riesling and the Kerner in the next few days, and then a wild ferment will kick off, and off we go.
Wow. Okay, so now we're gonna see a bit about cheese. So Barossa Valley cheese. And
Cheese is good.
Cheese is good.
I think it's time for cheese.
Barossa Valley cheese producer, they have a good range of products. Majority of them, they are focused on the soft, fresh cheeses, which we have tonight, because that is the platter that you have tonight is an example of the company, mainly. So we have the three main soft cheese for the company. There is another one which is a Camembert made by goat milk. Oh, look at like we are not at the moment. We are not at warm temperature.
It's pretty cold in the room, yeah.
How you can see, it's melting anyway. Like it's coming out like a nice lovely tongue. And then the following one is the wash rind, as you've seen in the presentation, and in the instructions that I sent to you, if you're following them, obviously. And I will speak about them too. And then we have the triple.
No one reads the instructions.
Yeah, I know. I spend so much time to do it. And then this is the triple cream. And then to finally finish with La Dame. La Dame that you received, it's a semi-hard goat milk cheese, as you can see. And if you have curiosity about the cheese making process, we can speak about that too. So, and we can even have a quick chat with Victoria. So Victoria, she is the founder of the company with her mother, actually, for what she said to me. She's Irish, and she arrived in, their parents actually arrived in Australia, looking for a more quiet and better place when they were 20. Yeah. So me and Victoria, we had a nice chat a couple months ago, and I want to share that with you. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to disappear, and we are going to watch this video together. Don't run away, hopefully. Welcome, Victoria. Victoria, you are the owner, or you are a business partner in the Barossa Valley cheese, is that right?
Yeah, it's my business. So I started it 17 years ago.
Oh, okay. So you said that you are from Ireland. Is that originally you from Ireland, or that's your family moved here in Australia?
My family. So my parents moved from Northern Ireland or in the early 70s. They were very young, so they were only 20 years old. And at that point in time, there was lots of troubles in Northern Ireland with Protestant and Catholic. And so there was a big religious divide, and my parents believe in equality and everyone living a wonderful life together. And so they wanted to get away from those troubles and come over to Australia, where they thought that they could create a better life for themselves and their family. So that's why they moved out here. And I think they're often called the 10-pound poms, because it would only cost £10 to hop on a boat and then come across to Australia. So my family are all in property development and real estate. And then for me, I studied winemaking at Adelaide University. And so I did my winemaking degree, and then I travelled all over the world making wine and eating lots of food, and I fell in love with the idea of making cheese. I spent a lot of time in France, and in France obviously there's lots of cheeses that are very specifically regional, and so I just absolutely loved that. And then when I came back here to Australia, there was nobody making cheese in the Barossa, and the Barossa is obviously very well known for wine, and so I decided that it was a good opportunity. And I was young enough to start something. So we don't process massive quantities of milk. We only process about 8,000 to 10,000 litres of milk each week, which is not very much. And that's all handmade here in our factory in Angaston. the cheeses that we sort of specialize in are more of the softer, fresh styles of cheese. We do a few hard cheeses, but more soft and fresh.
And do you use different type of milk, or do you have one favorite type of milk?
So we source all of our cow's milk from a local dairy farm. It's about 10 minutes away. And we've always collected their milk. So we've been had a great relationship with them for over 17 years now. And then our goat's milk we collect from, or they actually bring it to us. It's from just out of Murray Bridge. And we've been accessing their milk for about 12 years. And every now and then we get a little bit of buffalo milk, but not very often.
Perfect. Even though it's French style, but I think it's more French, but Barossa style. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. And that's really important to us. So we wanted to make something that is authentically regional, so that we can put our hands on our heart and say it's Barossa cow's milk, made in the Barossa and made by people that live in the Barossa.
So, and what's the vision?
So for us, I think our aim is to really educate people. We're still at the beginning of our journey. I still have a long list of products that I would like to make that are more regional. We're working on developing products that are very much a unique Barossa experience. We want to create something that is not replicated in other areas. It's something that's very unique to us, and it's something that shows the characteristics and the terroir of the region for us and ongoing opportunities. So I think what I'd really love to see actually in the cheese industry in general is more people producing something that's authentically Australian, and how we come about with that is everyone's journey in the cheese industry, rather than trying to be European.
It's really nice having local food producers that they want cooperate, and they want not just promote themselves, but what you say, promote South Australia or Australia. Quick question, how many people are working with you at the moment?
We have 15 staff, so half of them are out in production, and then the other half are doing our retail sales.
Exactly, that's what I was asking, because one of the main visions of AgriAdventures is to help a local food producer to access the tourism as product diversification in order to make them more sustainable. So being specialized in hospitality and industry, I know how hard it is produce food, and having the opportunity to promote food during these experiences allows these businesses to be, be able to provide for the local families. So
that's right.
That's why I've been asking you, because 15 people to have work together, it doesn't look like, but it's really a look after.
But we want to grow that, and we want to grow it so that we're all still a small business, but we're nurturing and supporting other families in the region, and that we're supporting our farmers most importantly, because our farming community, they're the ones that don't get paid enough for their produce, and we want to support our farmers. We want them to be there for another 10 generations of their farm, not going, this is too hard, and walking away. Our farmers are so resilient, and we want to support that. So that was one of actually the primary reasons why I started the business in the first place, is to add to value adding to agriculture in the Barossa.
Perfect. You said everything. Okay. Thank you very much, Victoria, for being with us. See you the next time.
Great. Thank you.
Ciao.
Bye.
Okay, so who was following? Obviously, I've been cutting the interview. The interview was 15 minutes, but we cannot go 15 minutes because unfortunately we have still the cheeses over here to try. And actually, fortunately, we have these cheeses to try.
That's right.
So I will start now with the first cheese. And the first cheese that we have, as I said, is the Barossa Camembert, which is, all good. We disappeared. The Barossa Camembert, I can show it over here. No. Okay, so finally I can see that. Perfect. So the Camembert
Mhm.
as itself, it was just a fresh cheese that they figured out to keep it moist.
Mhm.
Why? The problem was for them that when you were making a small cheese with that type of cheese, it dries out really quick. And when it dries out really quick, it loses its value, it loses its quality. So what they tried to do is to preserve the humidity inside. And they found out there were really interesting mushrooms, or in this case, well, the fungus that were, or molds, that they were loving growing in the cheese. And the Camembert region, first of all, was the breed, and then they became the Camembert. They were specialized on growing these type of cheese. So this one is less than 3 months of aging. And then what they use is the Penicillinum camemberti. They put it inside, and then when it grows, it creates this nice and lovely, soft, white skin that helps to keep the humidity inside, so it stays soft and creamy like it is. And then what we're gonna do? We're gonna taste it.
Absolutely.
Let's go, kill it.
So I think it's fascinating, you know, what you said before,
Oh, thank you very much.
Simone, about Victoria. Her background was in making wine first, and that's where I met her. I remember I met Victoria at she was a winemaker at Yalumba, and it surprised me because I didn't know about her passion for cheese, because I was just seeing her in passing and so on. But there's so many parallels with cheese making and food making in general, and wine, and the aging, and the self-preservation that you're talking about there with you know, that the penicillin creating that mold.
Roquefort or Camembert, yeah.
Yeah. It's fascinating, the history behind the cheeses, things that have been done by necessity that create something that's so specialized, and then take something that's some simple flavors and complexes them. And it's the same with wine. The process is involved, sometimes by accident, other times intentionally. We discover these great breakthroughs that shape flavor.
So as you have seen, I've been engulfing the cheese, and that is because what generally I have to do, or I want to do when I do a testing experience, I try to keep myself empty, because I need to have my nose completely empty to any stimulation. So I didn't have lunch. So it was my cheese attack. Nice mushroomy. I can see that you can taste this kind of mushroomy creaminess,
lovely heady
hint of minerality, which is definitely really good. And you were speaking about this kind of blend, which milky also. Can you find out if you're on the other side? I can smell a little bit of nice and fresh milk. But if you have a look, at the cheese itself, and now I'm going to go back and trying to show you from the other camera. If you have a look at the cheese itself, so generally when you have the aging of this type of cheese, the line in the middle, if it's not aged enough, it's kind of chalky, white chalky. This cheese is perfect. This is the perfect aging that you would like to have in this type of cheese. Sorry, I was also eating. And it's interesting because now I would like to know, could we work with this one? Don't say that. Maybe is it too much? I think maybe it's a little bit too intense.
Yeah, I think there's a tussle going on here, and one is the cheese is much more subtle.
Exactly. So a secret, when you do a testing and you want to find out if there is a good balance between wine and food, that's what I do, or drinks and food. I have a little bite of the product, and I have a little sip of wine, and I chewing them together. The outcome is if it's a balance or not. And generally, it's quite sincere. It tells you straight away if it works or not. So I'm going to try. Get more.
And that's not to say that sometimes disparate or different levels of flavor can work too. You can bounce from a more intense flavor to a more subtle flavor, one with the food and one with the wine. Sometimes the wine can prove a refreshing foil to a type of flavor. But Riesling with like a fatty pork dish or something like that can be that that foil that cleanses your palate before you taste something strong again.
Exactly. And that's what actually this wine was doing. So it's skimming a little bit the cheese. It in some point can be problematic if you get a little bit too much of skin. You could have a little bit too much bitterness in your palate for the balance. But I have a good aromaticity, so it's not like the cheese is defending itself. It's not a guy that is hiding and running away. It's defending itself, and then it's kind of soft with this hint of bitterness that it could be done better. We will see on the wash rind, because that is the next step. And at this point, I don't mind if we're going to skip the sharing of the presentation. Just I want to stay in time. Okay, so the wash rind. Wash rind, it's interesting. It's actually one of my favorite cheeses because one of the, do you know what's one of the most known wash rind? You know that?
No.
What? The most known is Taleggio.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
So Taleggio is one of the most, so far, and I've been living in 5 different countries, and that was one of the most known. It's still a little bit young in my opinion. However, wash rind is interesting. It's an interesting process because it has a similar idea than the Brio, the Camembert, which is you have this product, this shape, and you want to keep moist inside because that is the value. And what you do, you use this sort of molds, but they didn't know about molds.
Right.
So what they've done, simply, they thought, look, how do I keep it moist? I put water in it.
Yeah.
So I have this cheese and then just keep sponging it. And I want to add flavor. So what I do, I'm going to have water and salt, which is brine. And I'm spongy, one side and the other one. And when you reach the right aging, then you're going to have, oh, that's nice and creamy, so good too. And they didn't realize that there was a mold that was growing on it. It was the traditional Taleggio is orange. And then this one I was speaking before, as per color, is still white. I think it's because it needs a little longer aging, but that's okay. It's soft, almost soft. That's the other thing. As you've seen before, and let's go back to have a look because it's interesting. So over here we have the creaminess of the cheese. It's almost gone, by the way. And over here you can see what is the creaminess is in the corners of the cheese. So in that case, we don't have the chalkiness in the middle, but we have the creaminess at the borders. I will say that this cheese was in need of at least a week or a couple of weeks of aging longer. So obviously you can go with this one. That's fine. It's really good to eat. But the next time, then you can keep it in your storage area, and then you can keep it longer if you want to have the best expression. Let's kill it. Go for it. You're the closest one. In the meantime, I'm going to have a sip of wine. How's it going over there? All good? You didn't expect it, huh? Thank you very much.
Is this so when they're applying the brine, it's wrapped in cloth generally?
No. It's just the cheese, just the shape of the cheese, and then what they do, they sponge it and they twist, and they sponge it and they twist every 6 hours generally. And then depends what you are.
That's a high labor. It's quite a lot of input involved in that cheese then.
Yes, exactly. But that was, if you think about cheeses, they were the only way for what do you call that, shepherds to sustain themselves. So there was a lot of care and love to these products. Actually, that was the only way for them to preserve the main product, which was milk. So how do I can transport milk if milk can get off in 24 hours? So they invented cheeses. So cheeses, they were really important for them. And that's why, like in Taleggio, it's a valley nearby Bergamo, where I'm from. And then it became famous the world because this type of cheese. So it's really interesting how cheese, a simple product, can change a lot.
It's a little bit more pungent, a bit more aromatic.
It is
still quite subtle.
Yes, it is definitely. Well, it's less characteristic. I can say that the Camembert was really characteristic on its flavor, really recognizable. While over here, you know what they say about Taleggio? It stinks like your feet or mine. Sorry, more mine than yours. That's what I mean. And
I've washed like the cheese every 6 hours.
And Exactly, me too. Sometimes a shower is a good thing to have. And so again, it's there, it just needs a little bit more aging.
This is really lovely with the, I think that's quite a nice foil because of that pungent and slightly funky nature of the cheese. The wine is a really nice counterpoint to it.
I want to see this cheese with the red.
Yeah.
I'm really interested to see what's happened. Okay, so any questions? Same thing.
Solve this.
Well, you can write the text and then we can reply. Is the fungus a particular species? Yes, depends which cheese you are going to speak about. So for instance, if you're going to speak about the washed rind, and I'm going to read it because if you think I'm going to remember even the technical name, is the Brevibacterius linens. This is one variety. But if you have the Camembert, is the Camemberti. If it's the blue cheese, and you have the Gorgonzola, or you have the Roquefort, is Roqueforti. So some of these varieties, they are now recognized, and now they are actually kept selected for this cheese production.
So they culture the selected strains, a bit like not dissimilar to with some winemaking, you'll use a specific strain of yeast.
Yes.
And yeah, controlling that is the fun thing.
It's actually interesting because now they were in the past, but now there are a lot of wine producers that they use wild yeast.
Yeah, we're doing a lot of wild ferment, and wild ferment is an interesting term, but it tends to allow the indigenous yeast that's on the grapes. Would be the one source, but also you can't discount the indigenous overwhelming the strongest yeast that's in the winery as well, can sometimes fight and assert itself over the top.
Control.
So
think about if they would make a cheese that is a wild yeast, wild fermented.
Or anything and everything could happen.
Yeah, I still like what I like now. I found out the softness in this wine. I found a little bit of apricot or apricot skin, a little bit of orange.
It's coming to that color. The aging of the wine is at a really lovely point now. We've got the 2021 wine in the winery, which is really overt and extroverted. But now this is settled down. You're getting some lovely complex secondary characters coming through, including some aging characteristics that are creeping into the wine.
And I remember last time that you gave me the option to try 2016. It was amazing. So that's another good thing about this wine, for my experience, which is that I was able to try the aging of the wine, and even like 5 or 6 years older, it was getting better and better.
Yeah, like Riesling we say, like these are straight Rieslings behind here. 20, 30 years, there's no problem for many good Rieslings, especially if they're high acidity, structured wines from a cooler region. I've tried Eden Valley Rieslings from the 1920s. They're still just hanging on there, in some cases under cork. This is one from Yalumba that we were privileged. Robert, who owns Yalumba, opened up for us, and that just blows your mind. I've had my birth year, 1973, Leo Buehring Riesling, many times, and it got better and better.
I'm not 73, but I'm
please. Well, I can't get any more of it now, but my mum did keep aside quite a few, and that just showed how versatile that grape is. And because it's just over 30% of this blend, even though Gewürztraminer is not as ageable, it's still quite age-worthy. Kerner is too. The Riesling in this will mean that this wine is a very safe bet for 5 years. It's a safe bet for 10 years, and it's a pretty good shot for 15 to 20 years. I think it's going to get more complex, more interesting, more oily and unctuous in the bottle, and it'll just keep on surprising us, I think.
I am a fan of aging, so and every time that
we're all going to age.
Just
better get used to it.
As my sommelier teacher in Italy said, that things get better when they age a little bit. And
that's something that old people say.
Okay, let's move on the next wine, because we've been speaking a lot about this white, and now we can move on the other one, which is the red, because definitely you haven't opened it yet. So I'm gonna do this and go back over here. Ta-da! That's what we have.
So La Resistance
which it can be shown over there. This
Yeah, so the one on screen before is the old label. This one here is a lovely Leah Grant painting. You can actually see some of her artwork in the background here. So we've got, you know, they look pretty Spanishy kind of, not Spanish, French colors,
Yep.
French tricolor.
Definitely.
And that's with reason. It's called La Resistance. So what are we doing? We're calling a Barossa GSM with French varieties. We're calling it La Resistance for a reason. So even though we're in the middle of Australia with these beautiful old vines, and then that's the nice thing about the Barossa is we've got some of the oldest Grenache vines in the world, because France and other old world regions have been ravaged by phylloxera at times.
Spoiling all the secrets, don't you?
Well,
no, good.
You know, our old world mates had to tap us on the shoulders and ask for some vine cuttings, and a lot of France and the old world was replanted with Australian cuttings and Californian cuttings.
Yes.
So it's exciting, you know, because for all the same reasons why Australia's been a good place during COVID.
Mm-hmm.
It's also a good place to be isolated from some of these pestilence that hits the vineyard. So
absolutely.
You know.
By the way, if you have other questions, just write them on the chat, and we can integrate them.
Being in the middle of a desert is sometimes advantageous.
Oh yeah, exactly, absolutely. Okay, so we have La Resistance, Grenache, Shiraz, Mourvedre, GSM, which was really interesting for me to discover when I came over here. Originally, the blend is from the Rhone Valley, is that right?
Yeah.
Sort of.
So, you know, I'm a typical Barossa guy. I haven't even spent that much time in France, but I know the region enough to know, you know, the beautiful thing about France is you go somewhere and you kind of know what you're going to get, don't you? You go to the Rhone, you're going to get, you're definitely going to get some Shiraz, some Grenache, some Mourvedre, some Cinsault, and then on the whites you'll get the Roussanne, Marsanne, Viognier type of blends. Mm-hmm. But in Australia, climatically and because of our lack of rules, we tend to try to do everything. You know, you come to the Barossa Valley historically, and you might be trying a Merlot, or you'll definitely try Shiraz, and you'll see some Grenache. And if you go back far enough, you would have seen these things in port. So we had these port varieties that happen to be Grenache, Shiraz, and Mourvedre, amongst other things. So it's a quirk of history that we've got so much Shiraz in the Barossa Valley. But the beauty is the Grenache and the Shiraz and the Mourvedre climatically suit so well, and that's why they've survived. You know, the Germans planted Riesling in the Barossa Valley floor, and in many places where it didn't suit, so that those vines are not there anymore. They're in the Eden Valley, but where it's too warm, the Riesling's been pulled out, and more Shiraz and more Grenache and other varieties have been planted. It's the same with Chardonnay. There's not a lot of Chardonnay left on the Barossa Valley floor. So now we're getting down to the nitty-gritty of what works in the Barossa Valley, and GSM works. Shiraz works, Grenache works, Mourvedre or Mataro. People get confused. Mourvedre is Mataro, is Monastrell. The three M's. Yep. They're the synonyms. Same as Syrah and is Shiraz. We've gone with Syrah on this label because we are definitely channeling the European interpretation of Syrah here. So what that means is we're looking for, you know, that elegance and spice and lift, not super ripe, not that big clubby on the head kind of Shiraz that the Barossa can do.
Okay.
And the Grenache is the fruity core of this wine. It's the driving force. It's more than 50% of La Resistance every year. Now we call this part of our Battle for Barossa series.
Okay.
So the other one is called La Conquista, the Spanish, and we've got a bit of history coming up about the battle. But yeah, you can see the colors in the background. That's what the La Conquista label looks like, very Spanish, and that's Tempranillo, Grenache, Graciano. So we're celebrating the two blends and how these middleweight expressions are so versatile, and how they also are quite interchangeable in some ways, yet very different in other ways.
Okay, so well, we have done the testing. No, let's have a. Okay, to me, one of the characteristics, apart the fact that I like giving always a little bit of time to have a brief. which is one of my things. It's actually one of my favorite things to do because it's like when you have a little bit of expectation for something, you don't run straight away on. You just give a little bit of time, which is something I like, but not everybody. But it's okay.
Some people just rip the top off and get stuck.
Yeah,
in it.
exactly. Click. No, it's not my style. And well, I have definitely a good jam, which is a classic from the Shiraz. Yeah, it could be a raspberry jam. It could be
Definitely some raspberry.
I don't want to say blackcurrant because it's too a classic, you know.
Yeah, there's a lot of those things going on there, from strawberry, raspberry, all the way through.
I have a bit of minty, a bit of kind of
yeah, that's true.
balsamic, I can say. Yeah, it's possible to smell the minerality because I do.
There's I think the Barossa's defining feature is a lot of ironstone. There's a real ferrous iron sort of core.
So yeah, to me straight away is a type of wine that calls for meat, which could be a gamey meat, which could be just a steak. If it's say just, it's euphemism because there's a lot of complexity. Okay, so I was considering to go into the cheeses, the final two now. I've been destroying, unfortunately, I've been killing the poor cheese. I'm gonna show you what I've done because it's really sad. Look, I was just based myself.
Okay, we're just gonna eat them.
Yeah, definitely, absolutely. Okay, so what we have over here is the triple cream Barossa cheese, cow milk. Again, same concept. We have the white skin, that is the same kind of bacteria, the Penicillium camemberti. Something that is really interesting, not a lot of people know about, is why it is called triple. Did you know that?
Three
cheese. You know
milks,
that?
Three.
No.
What?
No. Okay, so this is actually legislation in France. It's amount of fat.
Yeah.
Amount of cream or
if double cream is good, triple cream is going to be better, right?
Yeah, depends on how you use it. But anyway, and so by legislation, triple cream need to get 75% of fat in, but on the dry mass.
Yeah.
So when I say 75%, sometimes people shakes a little bit.
Freak out. Yeah.
75%. Yeah. It's almost all the cheese. Yeah, it's not. Okay. What they've done is that because it's easier to measure the amount of fat in the dry part of the milk of the cheese, they measure the fat in that part, but they're not keeping in consideration the moist and the water. So generally, 75% on the dry part of the cheese, it's around 35–40% of
the total
fat
mass.
on the total.
No problem.
That's interesting because this is a standard that can be used, for instance, for Parmigiano. So they use the same standard, but the Parmigiano is a completely different type of cheese, and because of that, you need to have something recognized.
Just don't mention the fat. People.
Let's speak about creamy.
Fat's good for you.
Creamy, exactly. Helps to digest.
Yeah.
Okay, so
we mustn't villainize fat.
No, absolutely. I've done bad mistakes in the past. That's for you.
Oh, thank you, sir.
You've done that before with me, and I'm gonna do with you. Cheers, if you're still there. Well, the camera is still okay, so all good.
I'm gonna try this with the Riesling first.
Yeah, I agree. Sweet. Something missing? Obviously, the creaminess.
Wow,
it's pretty intense. The mushrooms, the mushrooming, kind of earthy. Mineralities also.
Something happens when you have that the field blend, the Riesling Gewürzkerne with it. It just seems to amplify what's going on with that mouth perfume.
Exactly. And it smells even, I have one of my favorite ice cream, which is really difficult to find over here. It is called Fior di Latte. Fior di Latte, you know Fior di Latte? So it's mainly milk. And it's so milky, so delicate, but really nice. I get the same notes in these cheese, which is really interesting because the last time was not like this.
What was it like last time?
It's so interesting. Every time I do testing, I have different outcomes even from the same cheese.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of the aging of the cheese.
Mm.
So as I shown before, in this case, this is you can I don't need to touch it. You can see we have already 3 different aging of the same similar style, because it is a kind of similar style. So it's a or wash, but it's a fresh cheese. It's a raw cold. It should be cold, and then you can see this one needs a bit of aging. This one is in the middle, and this one is at the end of the aging. So that's really interesting. So every time when I do this testing, I have this complexity to define. And when you have to do the matching with wine, you have to keep this in consideration.
Yeah.
Which is really difficult when you are a sommelier to do this, because you don't know what's going to happen.
It's a bit like vintage variation, isn't it? Too like people often want consistency, and we want consistency to a degree. But you also enjoy the subtle variations.
Absolutely.
And you know, that can be some of the delight in cheese, is seeing what happens with time, and the setting, the people you're with.
Yep.
Same with wine. And also the wine or what you're having, that cheese with can completely change the experience.
Yes. And I just had in mind myself honey, a drizzle of honey on the top.
Oh yeah.
Or if you have some specific varieties of honey, which is chestnut, maybe not, because it gets bitter. But if you have salt variety, you have one Manuka.
Manuka. I was thinking about Manuka honey with this.
Oh my God, that will work so well. Almonds, dried fruits, they will work so well.
Kangaroo Island, Ligurian.
Oh, honey. Oh, yeah. Sorry. Thank you very much. So interesting. And
we'll have to go.
Yeah. No, it didn't work. Maybe next time.
We'll fix that in editing.
We're gonna teleport the next time.
And it works beautifully with both.
Exactly. That's what I was considering. Is it working well also with the red wine?
The triple cream is a really good match with both.
Leave the comment below. No, leave the comment in the chat.
Yeah. And that's really good to know, because often we're doing our tastings with multiple wines. There's a lot of cheeses out there, and some work specifically very well with certain wines, but to have a few wines that can cross between an aromatic white to quite a different Rhone inspired red blend is a versatile cheese. You've got your versatile wines and your versatile cheeses, and
exactly. And it's not really far away.
Yeah.
Because that's the other thing. We're speaking about Barossa Valley, Barossa milk.
Yeah.
So we're working with the locals, which is definitely one of the best. Now, we're gonna move. I'm gonna show you, because that is the last cheese for tonight. Sorry. That is Barossa La Dame. This is goat milk, semi-hard. It's aged 18 months. Okay, some interesting fact about difference between soft cheese, hard cheese, semi-hard cheese. Everything is correlated with the curd. So if we keep in mind the casein, which is the protein inside in the milk, is coagulating, connecting different pieces of proteins. They making a net inside in the curd, and that they react to heat, acidity, and the enzymes. The enzymes is rennets. They can be natural, so plant-based or animal-based. Okay, how you change these variations you have a different outcome. Okay, so this one, for instance, generally when you have semi-hard or hard, you increase the temperature.
Yeah.
You have higher amount of enzymes that they are making the net harder. Okay, and you cut the curds in small pieces. Why you do that? Mainly because if you cut in small pieces, when you remove the whole curd, you lose more water.
Yeah.
So this is the main difference, technically the main difference between all these cheeses. Now, let's characteristics. Okay, I've been copying the description on the Barossa Valley cheese website. So characteristic goat flavor. Now, what's a characteristic goat flavor? Yes. Am I tricky with my question?
No, don't you think it's a
It's like
Is
I
it a
never licked a goat. So
well, I think characteristic goat's cheese flavor. I mean, I think more is what they're talking about.
How's it going, Tasman? No good?
So no, we're not licking the goat. No, but I know what they're saying.
Yeah.
You know, when you're tasting, you know when you're getting a sheep's cheese or a goat's cheese, don't you?
Yeah.
You know, you're in a different spectrum of flavors. Now, are we talking about the aromatically, that sort of funky goat, which is more pronounced on some cheeses than others?
Yes, definitely.
Or are we talking about texturally as well?
No. I'm speaking about more the flavors, like the smell that you can find.
Yeah.
Because the texture, it comes from how the curd been worked. So you can have a fresh camembert made by goat milk, and the texture will be like a camembert, but the flavor is different. And
that's a beautiful cheese.
what do you think? Goat. French people is amazing with goat cheese generally. I can get it at the back. It's classic aromatic, a bit of hay and well, obviously goat, which is how do I can define it?
It's hard to pin down, but I know.
I can recognize it. I can recognize
of course.
it. Can you recognize it? If you can't, eat more goat cheese.
Maybe that's why they call it a characteristic goat flavor, because you can't describe it.
Absolutely. Okay, now I want to show you if I can pick it. Sorry, because it's something interesting. I don't know if you can see it on your cheese. Let's see if I can focus. Maybe not. There is a white dot. Can you see the small white dot over there? That is a protein crystallized. And that is a sign of aging. And if you have a look, for instance, at the Parmigiano or Pecorino or cheeses that have long aging, they have this kind of dots more often. It's a crystallized casein, and that is much more digestible. It's much easier to digest, and it's really nice. One of the motives why the aged cheese, they enter Australia easier than the fresh one is because the easy digestion and the lack of some bacteria that we eat, but they don't want to eat. Secret. Okay, so in your opinion, this cheese, the last one, where is going to go best?
I think instinctively, I would say the GSM, the red.
Let's go for it. Let's go for it.
It feels like that end of the night kind of cheese where you're reaching for a big red. It's got the texture. It's got the flavor that it just says serious, you know, and reclining in the chair. It doesn't have the same fattiness, well, up front of that triple cream. You know, it's there, but it doesn't scream out for that reason to cut through it as much. But it does work. What do you think?
I'm pondering. It's so interesting because the red, so the GSM, actually, at my palate, has lost against the cheese. So the goat cheese, it was more intense than the red.
Yeah.
While the white, they have a kind of dance together.
Yeah. Typically the type of so for me, when I think about Grenache and that GSM, I do think about some goat's cheeses and some but more of the lighter, fresher style.
We love the goat cheese too.
Yeah, it's delicious. But it's probably the maturation on it and the hardness of it possibly is outcompeting the wine a little bit.
Yeah. Now I'm thinking, why the white? Oh, wait a second. The red with the wash rind.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think that's a pretty.
That is interesting.
That's an intuitive,
That's really interesting.
instinctive call.
Because I personally prefer the white with the goat cheese.
Yeah, I was speaking from what I would instinctively do, and that's not always, doesn't always play out. And that's the beauty of experimenting with the cheeses. You don't know until you try it.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I'm not coughing because it's not good. I'm coughing because I did it too quick. I say that the goat cheese works also good with the red. To me, it works better with the white, but it works really well with the red.
Yeah.
The Duft Punkt.
Duft Punkt.
Duft Punkt.
Everyone calls it Daft Punk.
It works so well with everything. It works well with everything.
I love the Duft Punkt as a cheese platter wine. It is super versatile.
Absolutely. It is the guy that plays well almost anywhere because it has the intensity and the complexity to pair and work around without being too invasive, but be there. And don't recognize it.
Don't you think the different cheeses pull different things out of that wine as well? Like you see different aspects of that wine depending on which cheese you're choosing or tasting at that point.
Absolutely.
It accentuates the Riesling in some or the Gewürztraminer in others.
Absolutely.
Fun wine and cheese is fun.
Lovely. So now, are we going to shock them with a little bit of history?
Sure. Yeah. I don't know about shock. It'd be.
Yeah, because they was not expecting. Now we'll see what they know.
I think it's interesting history.
Absolutely, it's an amazing, interesting.
It's a tale of many countries.
So cool. So we have a message over here. Thank you so much for this evening. We're enjoying every minute. Now we need to get young Tasman to bed, obviously. Thank you, Tasman, for following us. I saw that you were really, really tired. Thank you. I'm so sorry.
Not the most exciting thing for a young person to watch other people taste wine and cheese, but good night.
Oh, wait a second. Before they go, there is one question. How does aging affect the characteristics of Riesling?
It's in Australia, we see a more pronounced aging characteristic due to mainly due to sunshine. So in Europe, I think the aging happens gracefully, and you tend to get that the color becomes more golden, the flavors and the richness increases. We see all of that here too, but there's an extra little something we call like a toastiness that comes into our Rieslings probably earlier in the aging process here. And it all depends on how much sun's hitting the actual grapes, whether there's really good canopy of leaves over the vines. But I find that toastiness, it makes a Riesling 3 wines in one, really. The fresh Riesling, the middle-aged Riesling, and the old Riesling. And they could, if you showed someone, they would probably say they look like, if they didn't know, 3 different varieties. That toastiness, people talk about that Petro or Kero or all these other horrible, petroleum. But I know what they're talking about. They're talking about a toast that borderlines on a smoky sort of petroleum kind of influence. But it's I like the word toastiness, because it's that slight smokiness that almost, some people sometimes think with an aged Riesling, has it been in oak? Does it have? It's almost that toasted oak kind of character, but it's different. It's different. And the wine becomes, as we said, more golden, more richer, more viscous.
Okay.
And the pretty fruit and aromatics dissipate a little bit, and it takes on a much more secondary characters.
Okay.
I think. secondary characters. So we're not just starting to talk about apple and lime and citrus and jasmine florals, or and we're talking about some of those more, you know, with a red wine you talk about leather and and other things, but with a white wine it might be you know, more honeyed, more that toast, that jam on toast, marmalade on toast kind of thing, smokiness, all sorts of other complexing flavors that you wouldn't immediately associate with a young Riesling.
Okay. What I can say from my experience in terms of Riesling, in this case more European Riesling, is that coming from Mosella's areas, or coming from cold regions, the classic fresh Riesling has a high level of acidity.
Acidity, yeah.
And that acidity, it's, I can say, unpleasant in the beginning of its life.
I think that's the big thing for the German wine producers, Riesling producers, is acidity almost becomes like, here we look for it because the warmth means we lose acidity.
Exactly.
In Germany, it's the opposite problem. Too much acidity can be a problem.
Exactly.
So they use residual sugar, sweetness to combat it. But Riesling is good because we like acid. You know, there's a reason why we like salt and vinegar chips. You know, and a squeeze of lemon on fish and chips, or you know, acidity in Thai food. If you take out the acidity, you know, it's the fat dominates and the sweetness, and it becomes about a blobby. You know, so acidity is the life in a wine.
Acidity gives the spinal, and it gives the vibrance, the flowers, and then in the aging, you have this decrease of acidity, so the sharpness, but you also increase in complexity and in softness. So we were speaking about.
Growing up, I heard about the Chaffey family. It's my middle name.
Yeah, exactly. Your middle name.
And then I learned about what the Chaffey brothers did, who they were, and where they came from, and Canadian pioneers.
So we're going over there.
Let's hear it.
That's what we're going to speak it. Ready? Okay, so your ancestors.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay.
Yes.
They were from Canada.
Correct.
Okay.
So the Chaffey brothers came from England to Canada. So Ontario. The fellow on the screen there is William Benjamin Chaffey. I don't think they can see them yet, but that's my great-great-grandfather. He and his brother George were what we call them irrigation pioneers now. But his brother George was actually an engineer who specialized in water movement. He engineered ships, designed propellers, all sorts of water propulsion, pumps, and they got into irrigation in California. They developed irrigation settlements and grew basically a fruit bowl for Los Angeles. But after some success in California, and there's even a city called Ontario, California, that's basically been engulfed by Los Angeles, and they named it Ontario after their home state. Oh, wow. So they were instrumental in a lot of things around Los Angeles, including they put the first electric lights in streets. So they were always on the bleeding edge, the cutting edge of innovation. Chifley, the politician from Australia, went to California to talk to the Chaffey brothers and invited them back to tender for this irrigation settlement. There was a growing, the city of Melbourne was growing fast, and it was very apparent that they needed more food, fruit and vegetables. So they identified that the Murray River flowing through Mildura would be an opportunity to grow in the middle of the desert a food bowl, a food production region. So they invited a lot of migrants out, and they came out in 1886 and bought a lot of land in the desert. We're talking about pretty hard country, and they took a big risk. And the first 3 years were extremely hard. At the same time, they were approached by the South Australian government, and they were asked to do a settlement in Renmark. So there was a bit of competition between Victoria and so while Victoria was a bit delayed, South Australia jumped in and said, come and settle Renmark. So Charles, the third brother, was asked to come out as well. So there were three Chaffey brothers in total. And what started as a food bowl, after a few years of drought, very quickly became a wine producing region. So it was actually a temperance settlement, a non-wine, non-alcohol consumption settlement at first.
Okay.
They were smuggling in alcohol on the water steamers up and down the river at midnight, and I think they quickly realized that the productivity may be actually better to not have a temperate settlement. They could control it better if they allowed it.
Absolutely.
And started planting. You know, there were some fantastic Italian migrants that came.
I want to go back on the presentation just because that's what we're speaking about,
Yeah.
which is that we have the orchard that was planted in 1895.
Yes.
And then there was still your family actually. And then the Mildara winery.
That's right. I think it was even called. It became Mildara later on, a few years later. But so from a temperate settlement to a grape growing region in less than 10 years. And Mildara has a great history. The name's almost disappeared from the consciousness now, but Mildara eventually bought Wolf Blass and became Mildara Blass.
Okay.
Foster's bought Mildara Blass, and that became Treasury Wine Estates eventually, which owns Penfolds and so on. So Mildara is actually the cornerstone of the biggest wine company in Australia. So my family started Mildara, but unfortunately they sold out before all the millions of, you know.
You have been lost this opportunity to do your own journey. What do you think?
That's right. So yeah, at least this is good because that's right. I think it's so much better to forge your own path. So Mildara was fantastic. They started, so these are wineries in the desert in Mildura. So we've got grape growing regions in Mildura now that supply a lot of the lower price wine that is exported from Australia under a lot of different brands. And the Chaffey Bros were instrumental in getting those regions going and proving the model. And then they also moved into Coonawarra.
Oh, okay.
Grew some lovely Cabernet and Shiraz in Coonawarra.
Something I would like to underline as is in the presentation over there is how interesting was, like back in the days, there was not the opportunity to transport the product, transport the wine in an easy way, considering there were like 6 months of travel on by boat to get back in Europe. The wine market was where they were from. So they were trying to sell the wine in Europe, in
England.
UK. Yeah, exactly. So one of the first products actually brings the name George. One of the first products was a sherry, so which was a fortified wine that was designed to be transported for that time. That's interesting. And then what I was also looking really interesting, Bean 37, which we know about beans and Penfold, the connection with them. We're speaking about
a lot of other beans apart from Penfolds,
1968. So 1968. And they were producing a blend Cabernet and Shiraz, which what we were saying before.
The Great Australian Red.
Exactly. It's like in Tuscany, I don't remember when, but they started to do a blend with Cabernet and Sangiovese too. So, and
Seaview. So the Chaffeys started in Mildura, and then we've drifted about 400 kilometres downstream to Adelaide, and south of Adelaide we've got McLaren Vale. And my great uncle Bill, he another William Benjamin Chaffey. So we've got William Benjamin Chaffey the first and William Benjamin Chaffey the second. We call him Ben. My dear uncle, who passed away some years ago, started this winery. Was famous for being the first Champenoise made in Australia, but also varietal Sauvignon Blanc. I think they made the first varietal Sauvignon Blanc. They had varietal Riesling, varietal Shiraz, and varietal Cabernet, and Shiraz Cabernet. So for me, those blends are very special. The blend of Shiraz Cabernet is special because of both Mildara and Seaview. So we do a super Barossa, and I think you picked up on the sort of the nod to the Super Tuscan or the reference there. But for us, it's that, you know, if Shiraz is good, Shiraz Cabernet could be even better. When you blend them together, you come up with something altogether different. And that goes back many, many years.
Interesting, definitely. Okay. So at this point, I'm really interested to know a bit more. I can actually tell a bit more about Barossa itself.
Yeah.
Because there are a couple of interesting facts. So the history of South Australia, we're speaking about 1834, 1836, when they arrived and they settled over here. It was the last colony, I think. It was one of the last colonies and it was the free colony because it was a compact.
Not a convict.
No, exactly.
Colony.
No
Yeah.
colony. It was
That's the big joke and everyone teases. We tease the other states because South Australia is we're not all convicts here. Yeah.
Exactly.
Although there's.
So, and the responsible person, now we can say, the first settlement was actually in Kangaroo Island, which is something interesting. But the first person who was responsible for the colony was William Light, which was the Colonel William Light that was coming from the English army, obviously, and it was following the development of the colony for the South Australian Company. Now, the interesting thing that I like to connect with Barossa is that he, before coming in Australia, speaking about 1811, had been fighting into the Cadiz battle. That is close by the Barossa range. So where are we? We are in Spain, at the bottom over there. And then over there is the range. And so the concept was the French with Napoleon army, they were moving in Spain and they created an ally with, or they became allied with the Spanish, fighting against the Portuguese people. So soon that they start to win, the French army decide to change their mind, be not friendly anymore with Spanish. So they began fighting against the Spanish and they were conquering the whole Iberian Peninsula. So what's happened? That the Cadiz battle, Cadiz is a port, okay? It's a
very crucial sort of strategic port, isn't it?
Exactly, because over there, all the navies, all the Spanish navy, they were anchored over there. So to conquer this port for French was meaning merely conquer the Mediterranean Sea.
That's right.
So there was really hard battle around. And what's happened that obviously English people didn't like the fact that French people was winning in Europe, so they decide to come over and give a help.
Involved, yeah. And the Portuguese. So the Spanish forces were definitely reinforced with the Portuguese and the English, and that's where Colonel Light comes in.
Exactly. And so he was over there, and then when he came after in Australia, he thought, sorry, a little bit too fast. I'm gonna move back. When he came in Australia, he decided to name the range Barossa.
Yeah, I think he was taken by how much the terrain reminded him of Playa de la Barossa, Barossa Ridge.
Yeah.
And in honor of that battlefield, named it Barossa. Interestingly, someone wrote it down incorrectly.
Yes, exactly.
And we've got BA instead of BARROSA, we have a region Barossa, BAROSSA, and everyone assumes because of Rossa, meaning red, that it's something about red roses, hill of roses, and this sort of other things. But it's simply named after that battlefield outside of Cadiz.
Yes, and now I would like. We were speaking a bit about that before. So that is the idea behind these two bottles.
Yeah, the battle wines, the La Resistance and La Conquista, is a rematch. It's a Venice rematch of the 1811 battle at Barossa Ridge. This time, instead of France attacking Spain, we've kind of got a Spanish invasion of our Barossa, which has previously been dominated by French varietals since the first plantings of Shiraz and Grenache and Mourvedre.
Absolutely.
So Tempranillo marches into the Barossa in around about 1999, 2000, and makes some waves, and really stakes a claim as an alternative medium weight wine. Particularly, I think it works as a middleweight wine. You can make a really dense, big Tempranillo as well, but Tempranillo is it's a bit like the Gewürztraminer in that white blend. It's low acidity, and it needs some propping up with some much more structured and high acid friends. And its higher acid friends are Grenache, slightly higher acidity, and then even more so Graffiano or Gracciano, which has lovely high acidity and is a very well structured and a spicy grape that really is, even though it's the third varietal in that blend, it defines that wine. It adds some life and spice and vigor to that wine. Same as the Mourvedre in the GSM. You take out the Mourvedre and you've lost structure. And the Grenache and Syrah are simpler, still enjoyable, but the M in the GSM is a very vital part of this wine.
Okay, so what do you think?
I think that's been a really fun, enjoyable opportunity to compare those cheeses from Victoria's range. I think I've got new ideas about, you know, versatility of cheese. I think
that's to show to the people that's following how it's happening.
That looks like they've been demolished.
Yeah, there was a bit of fighting.
Yeah.
Speak about bottles and all these kind of things, but it was an interesting experience. So if you have the opportunity to obviously visit South Australia, we really advise you to go and visit the possible new establishment for the Artisans of Barossa.
Yeah, so right now, Artisans of Barossa is open in Tanunda, and we've got a little wine bar called Vino Local, and behind that is the Artisans Tasting Room.
Okay.
Small scale, and in October 1, 2021, we opened the new facility just down the road on the outskirts of Tanunda, which is going to have a fantastic restaurant, a providor with Barossa cheese, other things. That's going to be everything that's great about the Barossa wrapped up in the one facility. So eight small producers, you know, people like ourselves, John DeVal, Sons of Eden, Lena Brothers, Schwartz, Spinifex, Hobbs, Purple Hands. Those 8 producers wrap up so many small, and a lot of them have been worked for other bigger wineries, and they're all doing their own thing now. So you've got 8 small winemakers, but we're all small guys, but we're getting the opportunity to work together and have this place where you can come and spend an afternoon and you can see the best of the Barossa in one place.
Perfect. And remember, if I came in South Australia, it was for Barossa, so you don't have to miss it.
Yeah, we'll see you in the Barossa. We'll welcome you to the new Artisans of Barossa, whether you come now or to the current facility or in October. Come and join in and be a part of the history.
Yes, 2021, by the way.
We'll see you in Barossa.
See you in Barossa.
Viva la Barossa.
Viva la Barossa.
That's a bit of a mashup right there.